And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, General Manager at WEIU. Today, we're going to talk to Blake Pierce, the Rural King Director of Finance, and also highly involved with the new sports complex that is coming to Mattoon here soon. So, welcome, Blake.
Thank you very much for having me.
First of all, congrats. You're a newlywed.
That's correct. 3 weeks in now.
3 weeks, so that's good. And I wish you nothing but the best, but man, on that stuff. Well, what I want to talk about, obviously, a lot of questions about the sports complex, and there's a lot of veins that we can go through. But the first thing I want to talk about is when you guys or your staff at the Rural King, let's take us back maybe 2-3 years when somebody was around the table and thinking about ideas. Where did the nugget or the idea spark from to build a brand new sports complex?
Sure. So prior to about 2-3 weeks ago, my role at Rural King was Director of Real Estate and Economic Development. And so with that position, chose new store locations and then was over all of our purchasing and selling or leasing of real estate that we have. And that includes things like the Cross County Mall in Mattoon.
Yeah.
And we were at a real estate conference. It was 3 years ago, approximately, and we were in between meetings with somebody. I don't know what we were working on, and he had a folder that had kind of a layout of a sports diagram, and making small talk. Hey, what the heck's that? And he said, "Oh, this is the best project I've ever worked on." And he was a real estate developer, and he said, "I've been able to recruit retail, restaurant, and hotels to an area that otherwise was kind of struggling for it. By putting a sports complex in, it's been a huge win for the community," and went on and on and on. And it was about later that evening that we sat around and said, well, Rural King had owned the mall for about a year or two at that point, and we'd had a lot of conversations with national retail restaurant groups, but struggling to get any movement over the finish line. How can we actually move the needle on something? We thought, this might be something we should look into. And it was literally that is what got us to where we are today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So if that brochure would have been sitting there, we may not be here today.
That's very, very true.
Well, everybody likes to know the status of things. That's the big thing when you're in a small town. Where are we today in the timeline and the status of the sports complex?
Sure. So maybe I'll give you just a quick from where it went from that point forward. So we got linked up with an kind of an individual consultant who gave us some ideas to work on, and we started with a study with the group, a feasibility study, about the time COVID hit, and everything. Actually, I think the guy we were working with got sick, and it kind of just settled for about 6 months. And then we were in Albertville, Alabama, where we're building a new Rural King store, and their city had a big banner about the sports complex that they were building down there. And we said, hey, who you working with? And they linked us up with a company called Sports Facilities Companies out of Florida. And they manage about 25 to 30 of these complexes across the country. And some name brand ones, Branson, Missouri, Myrtle Beach, Panama City, and then other not so name brand ones. And we got a hold of them, and they Rural King engaged them to do a feasibility study of, hey, is one of these even needed? And if it's needed, do we need 15 baseball fields? Do we need 4? Do we need 27 soccer fields? Do you need 6? Whatever that mix is. And they came back, with a stack about 100 pages long and saying, we think this is the inventory of assets that you need and could support based upon where you guys are at. So then you say, awesome. What's that cost? Well, that's another study. So 6 months later, they come back with another 100 pages and say, based upon our experience, and we think it'll cost this much, and we said, great, then how do you pay for it? And so all this, it was a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. We didn't approach the city until last summer when we first thought this had enough legs to talk more about. And then it was in the fall that we first publicly announced the project. And I think there was a little confusion, to your point, at that point, of where we were at with it. Some folks, I think, thought it was a done deal. This was going once construction starting. I think some people thought this is another pipe dream. This is never going to happen. The answer is it was somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
We had a good inclination that there was a way it could work, but we didn't have all the I's dotted, T's crossed, and exact numbers of, okay, this could help pay for it, but exactly how much money does that raise and when does it come in? That's what's been really going on since October. A lot of behind-the-scenes work with some really first-class professionals leading the project. So where we're at today is the week of the 27th. Kind of all the work for this project got relegated to a committee underneath Mattoon in Motion. It's called the Sports Complex Plus Committee, and I'm the chairman of that committee. And we have representatives from a lot of great community partners on that committee. First Mid, Sarah Bush, Lakeland, Eastern. We have a lot of great folks on that, the city of Mattoon. And we're going to be voting on a proposal, a recommendation, to unveil to the city council probably the first week of July. So this committee will say, hopefully. This is the plan forward that we think makes sense. That will then get presented to the City Council the first week of July. We'll probably do some town hall public feedback meetings in July, and then I think the goal is anything that would require city authorization would be the first week of August. In the interim, we've been continuing to work behind the scenes on design so we wouldn't be too delayed. I think everyone working on the project is optimistic that this will go forward, but nothing's been formally approved in any manner yet. But if things were to go to plan, we would start construction in the first quarter of 23, and the goal would be to be open 1 year later.
And the idea was you're going to do the indoor facility first, is that right?
So when we first looked at it in our funding mechanisms, that's what I think our recommendation is going to be, is we're going to recommend the indoor facility be created first, because the bulk of the funding for the project is off of the new sales tax and new property taxes generated by the commercial development that's added. This project is much more of an economic development play than it is just about sports. And so as people that maybe aren't into sports, I know you and I have an interest in sports, but not everybody does.
Yeah.
It's about how can we attract more restaurants, more shopping. That's really where Rural King's interest came from. Our owner, Alex Melvin, not a big sports guy, but he's thinking, how can we recruit more talent to Mattoon, Charleston area? And when you pull into town, if you saw a vibrant sports complex with shopping and restaurants, that's a totally different feel. Places to eat and shop is what people want when they look to move to a community. And we think when you couple that with already our existing demographics, which are actually better than most people give credit for, we found that that is what is getting some of these national groups over the hill to actually want to make Mattoon a priority and not 140 on some list someplace.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now let's think about the actual facility. The good news is that the name is open. It's not going to for sure be Lincoln Land Sports.
Yeah.
So it's more of a joke on our side, my side, because if you've heard me talk or write lately, I'm like, that's the only thing I really didn't like about it, being a sports guy. But you've got great news that that's not the name.
So we had to call it something to begin with, and I'm going to take full responsibility for that name, and I'll give you where it came from. I was trying to combine Land of Lincoln with like Disney Wild World of Sports, and we came up with Lincoln Land of Sports. And you and everybody else doesn't like it. So
I'm sorry, Blake.
No, that's totally fine. We also knew that there's probably going to be some corporate sponsorships involved as well that will help dictate the name. We are currently working with a professional marketing team they came back with a number of options, and I'm not going to rattle them off right now.
I get it, yeah.
But we'll have a new name, hopefully, that we're able to announce about the same time that city council meeting is.
Oh, you've made somebody's day, at least mine. So a lot of it is, though, into that Mattoon Emotions Committee is to go out and either, you're not really raising funds, but you're securing funds if everything goes well. Would that be a safe way to say it?
So we do have to raise $10 million privately for this project to work. So people ask, why isn't this being done everywhere? Because these are hard projects to justify. We have a lot of things working in our favor to make this project come together. One, we have a corporate citizen in Rural King willing to donate the acreage in a prime location, right off the interstate and Route 16. And then two, the numbers are tough to make. To build these things, they're expensive. And so our model, we need $10 million. The good news is we've already got 30% of that committed. I'm hoping to have closer to 70 to 80% of that committed by the time we're getting a vote in the first week of August. But yes, we have to raise the funds in order to do that. So there's a subcommittee as part of that committee. There's too many committees. Who's responsible? There's about 4 or 5 of us that's starting to go around and work on that.
Okay. Could you explain maybe the layout and the sports that will be covered if this thing comes to fruition?
Absolutely. So the indoor facility will be 8 basketball courts, which can be broken into 16 volleyball courts, and I'm told there's something like 25 different sports that can be done within this facility. Badminton, think anything that you could do inside, and there's probably a tournament for it somewhere. There'll be a video arcade and I think some e-gaming aspect that could be done inside as well, and then the indoor facility also during the week, when it's not as busy, can do things like trade shows, concerts. At Rural King, we bring like 500 associates to town a couple times a year for manager meetings. We're running out of space. This will be a perfect venue for that. Then on the outdoor side, let me back up again. On the indoor, it'll also have seating for about 3,000 people, and we're looking at putting in collegiate level locker rooms, so we can potentially host college level events, college level tournaments, to where it might make sense. We've had some conversations with EIU, more conversations to have. Lakeland is very interested in the opportunity to do some tournaments out of there as well. The outdoor side is 8 soccer fields or multi-purpose fields because they can serve as both purposes, 4 of which are grass, 4 are turf, because at higher levels of competition of soccer, I'm not a soccer guy, I'm told they want grass. And then 8 baseball/softball fields. It would be 4 400-foot fields and 4 300-foot fields, all turf. So as soon as it stops raining, I'm told 30 minutes later you can get out and start playing again.
Sweet. What has been the community reaction? You're a Mattoon kid guy. When you were around town, what do they come up and ask you and talk to you about?
So usually people fall into 2 camps, and I would say the bulk of folks are in the positive camp. There's a lot of people that see the opportunity this is for Mattoon. You're always going to have naysayers. The biggest thing I find with naysayers is they usually just aren't quite informed of the facts. And so that's why we want to do some of these town hall meetings to really help educate the public, because people say, we have the city of Mattoon, I've been there my whole life, we have this problem, how in the heck are we spending money on a $70 million sports complex project? Well, when you actually dig into the weeds, all the funds that are going to pay for this thing can't go to pay for some of those other issues. And it's my goal that through new growth and economic development, we're able to kind of lift the tide of all the boats and can solve some of those other problems in town and some of our city financial issues as well.
There you go. Now, are you in contact already with other retail and restaurants, or does that have to wait a little bit? How's that work?
So we started marketing the project back in January. We have a real estate brokerage company out of Cleveland called Goodman Real Estate who assists Rural King nationwide on selling and leasing property. They've done a fantastic job for us over the years, and they've helped sell and develop a number of shopping centers and what are called lifestyle centers in places. They've really been helping us lead this, but since we started marketing in January, that's the other thing with this project. These things take time. You have to think of, you have to get in somebody's radar, you have to negotiate a lease or purchase agreement, they got to decide when they're going to open, start construction. I mean, it's a multi-year process. The good news is we just got back from the real estate trade show in Las Vegas about 2 weeks ago, and we had fantastic meetings. The reception we got, especially when we were able to tell the story of, this is our hometown, this is why we're doing this, here's the demographics, here's, this is going to bring 580,000 people to town with discretionary income to spend. And I don't think we had a single no in all of our meetings, and it really kind of surprised us. So I left there feeling much better than I have. We have current negotiations already going where we're exchanging what are called letters of intent of, hey, here's the deal terms, and I'm hoping in the next month or 2 we might be able to start announcing some of those deals.
So the retail and the shops are kind of outline around the complex, correct?
Yes. So they'll be primarily adjacent to Home Depot to the east and kind of towards the front, so where restaurants and retail would want to be visible from the roads, and then the sports assets would be behind them.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, the one thing that I guess is concerning, not from my standpoint, but is concerning from, I think, the public, is that the rumor has that the Route 57 is also going to be, Interchange is going to be going under a major construction at possibly the same time Rural King is doing this. Is that a red flag, or is it just one of those things we have to deal with?
Well, first I wanted to give a little bit of clarification. So while Rural King was kind of the leader of this project, it's not just us doing it. So it's going to be probably a new not-for-profit that will own all the sports assets. I
was going to ask you that too.
And then Rural King's leading the commercial development.
Okay.
You're right. Interstate 57, the interchange there has to be redone. I'm told it's past its life. It's not up to current standards. We can't control that, but yes, I do think there could be construction going on concurrently. It's going to be probably a little messy on that side of town for a little while. The good news is I think they would be open about the same time too. So that part would work out, but it'll be a good time to be in construction in the area.
There you go. What about the current state of the economy? I mean, things are, obviously paying $5 a gas, but worrisome or not? Do you think this will be a thing that'll pass?
All great questions that we hear about, we get asked about. Is travel sports going to take a hit with gas being $5, and how long is that going to be? If I could answer that, you could answer that. We could probably do a few other things during the day. We believe, and the interactions that the sports facilities company has had, is that these level of travel sports are still traveling on the weekend. People will cut a lot of things before they cut their kids' sports budget. And a lot of these teams that are traveling have discretionary income that their $5 a gallon isn't going to keep them from coming to these tournaments.
There you go. When you let's fast forward, the thing's getting ready to open. Have you started thinking in the Blake Pierce thought about how can we just kick this thing off with some gigantic open? Or have you even thought about
I have not gotten that far. But you're right. There will be probably a great big bang of an opening. I think we've been so head down and trying to get all the details. There's so many details. Trying to make this a facility that is a location people want to come back to. Youth sports, travel sports is a growing industry. It's projected to grow, I think, something like 8% over the next 10 years. So it's going to keep growing. What that means is you're going to keep seeing some sports complexes popping up. How can our destination be one that people want to come back to? And we talk about a facility where you can come right off the interstate, you can park your car, and if you want, check into the hotel, walk to the games, walk to restaurant, walk to go shop, and never leave. That's a differentiator that we don't see in other places. And the other piece is we really don't build this unless we have all the commercial development along with it. Sometimes these are done where you build the assets and you cross your fingers if it'll work. This isn't really going to be set up that way. So all the small details of user experience, customer experience, how far you got to walk to park, where's concessions, where's bathrooms, that's where a lot of our focus has been.
Well, and again, I will say this from a travel sports dad for the last 15 years or whatever it's been, is that is a big selling point. The fact that you can park and not have to drive all over town or go to Charleston or Effingham. Nothing's wrong with those communities, but the idea is that if you can park and not have to drive and you can walk and do all that kind of stuff there. And you also then have to kind of promote the other amenities that the Central Illinois offers that, for the people that are going to be here maybe for a week-long tournament as well.
Yeah, and we are really viewing this as it's a regional asset, regional destination. Yeah, it might be in Mattoon, but how can we partner with EIU in Charleston when people are here and they got time between games to come check out campus, to come check out things like Lake Charleston? How can the whole area benefit from what is really going to be an influx of people and dollars?
You all talked off mic a little bit about, that you are trying eventually, you want to kind of have naming rights to all the facilities and fields and courts and stuff. So is that a process that starts now, or is that timelined out?
So that's already started. We have a subcommittee that is going out and trying to raise the $10 million that I mentioned, and kind of made a target list. We read books. We met with Tony Sparks, who is in charge of the YMCA project in Mattoon. We got some counsel from people that have done big capital campaigns, and those conversations are ongoing. So you'll actually probably start to hear more and more about that. We've started some higher level donor conversations at this point, and we really would like to go into that meeting in August having a lot of the bulk of the commitments figured out.
Let's talk about what this means to the area in terms of, I know hotel stays, dollars per year, visitors, and I know you've done some studies, but repeat a little bit of that, but also talk about the hotel stays and the people. I think that's important.
So this is anticipated to bring at maturity, which they define as like year 4, 580,000 visitors to town, which means we need an additional like 61,000 hotel night stays a year, which means even with the new hotel that's being built, we need 2 to 3 additional hotels to handle that demand during its peak times. That's why we're confident that we can bring in some additional hotel usage. I think it will help fill our existing hotels. People ask, is it going to hurt the existing hotels? I think it's going to fill everything up. And then dollars-wise within the community, I think it's something like a $25 million direct dollar spend anticipated in the community. So it's very impactful.
When you talk about Rural King's commitment to Mattoon, how proud are you when you are involved in a project like this, being a Mattoon person?
It's incredibly rewarding. To be honest, I first started getting involved in a few things in the community because we joke, I've never lived outside of Coles County, but my career and personal interests have taken me all over the place. But this is, and everybody that's working on this is our home. When we're doing a project here, and it's funny when you talk to other real estate developers, you don't know what it's like when a Dunkin' Donuts coming to town's a big deal, and you get asked about it every single day.
People ask all the time.
Every single day.
You would think it's a 500 job in business coming to Mattoon.
So I bring that up to say, like, these things impact us and our families just as much as it impacts everybody else here, and we're really motivated to try to bring and make this something that's going to be great. I'm super proud Rural King has become an awesome corporate citizen. I've had the opportunity to kind of be a conduit for some of that activity, and being from Mattoon and seeing the impact when you leverage those relationships has been fantastic.
You talked a little bit about it. I want to go back. Who will actually own and or run the facility if everything comes to fruition? So
as it currently looks today, and I don't think it'll change, it looks like a new not-for-profit will own the sports assets and the surrounding ground. So it's like 110, 115 acres. So Rural King would donate the acreage to this not-for-profit entity, and then they are going to hire a third-party entity to manage the facility. So right now the front runner for that is this company called Sports Facilities Management. They want to manage it. But we haven't agreed to that at this point.
Not quite that far along yet, or?
Not that far. So there would be a new board that would oversee it, and they would handle the negotiations and evaluating if they're doing a good job or a bad job. And after it's open, it should be self-sustaining.
When you talk about with the location and when you're working with the individual businesses that would surround the complex, is there certain lots available, or do they kind of decide, hey, I want this many square feet, or how's that work?
So we have a rough layout of where we think, based upon average sizes of users, and hey, this might make sense for a sit-down restaurant versus fast casual versus retail and a strip center, things like that. You actually can go on today, mattoonsportscomplex.com, and see the brochure and the commercial development layout of kind of what's tentatively planned. But to your point, once you get a user, they might say, okay, this lot's marked as 1.5 acres. We really only need 1.1, or maybe we need a little more. And your lines will kind of get defined as those users become more real.
Is there primo spots that cost more than maybe something?
Absolutely. Yeah. So like anything else, what's going to be most upfront and prominent is going to be most expensive. What's more on the side or tertiary is going to be cheaper. But it's actually not that much space. So I tell people there's also going to be a lot of additional development that's not a part of that core development, because there's only so much land as part of and we're trying to be mindful of, even if somebody says they want to be here, is that the right user for that spot? And that's sometimes challenging, because you got somebody that wants to do a deal, but you know what? That's not quite what we should probably have in that location of this center. And going back to making this long-term sustainable.
Will you have like batting cages and a warm-up place and all that stuff? Because I know that's what's one of the other things that as a former coach is like, is there stuff for your guys to do? Because a lot of times they try to jam all the fields in there because that's where the money's made. But is there places to warm up? So
yeah, I think both for the soccer and the baseball, softball side, they have some warm-up fields where you could do like take infield and then some batting cages to warm up.
Indoor, will pickleball be available? I had to ask you that.
I hear a lot about the pickleball crowd too. I think they would be. They can do about anything inside.
There you go. Well, we're just going to say yes on that. Those people can get with you. I've never played, but a cohort made me ask. Dunham's put their sign up, so it's close as we move across the street there. What's the status there?
So Dunham's is nearing completion. I think construction is 99% done. They're setting up the store. I think they're trying to accelerate when they're going to open, so I think they're trying to open early July. But that's a user that obviously is going to benefit in a great way.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about Dunkin' Donuts. I have to ask, what is the status of that?
So Dunkin' Donuts, we get asked about all the time.
I know.
It's the status has actually been the same the whole time, but people are impatient for their Dunkin' Donuts. I get it. So they're supposed to start construction this summer still. They submitted part of their plans, I think, to the city. I don't think they've gotten their full plans yet submitted. But they have to be open by the end of the year. That was part of our deal. So unfortunately, that was the answer 2 years ago when they first agreed to buy it, but I get it. People are impatient.
We had to ask. We got about a few minutes left. We're talking to Blake Pierce from Rural King today and the new sports complex in Mattoon, or coming to Mattoon. Anything that you wanted to get out there in these last couple of minutes that, to kind of, I always say to make sure people understand exactly what's going on out there, things that I may have forgotten to ask you.
Yeah. One we hit on, that this is more about economic development. And while a lot of the dollars of the new development are going to probably go into the investment of the project, things like, let's say Walmart sales goes up 5% because all these people are in town. Hopefully it'll go up more. That increased sales tax revenue will go directly to benefit the city and the other taxing authorities that receive those funds. And so there's going to be a lot of runoff analysis and benefit that'll be part of our recommendation too. The other big piece is if you're not into sports, or you don't have kids in sports, or they're getting out of sports, like I think you said you are soon, there's some other attributes of the project that'll be beneficial to the community. One is we're looking at partnering with the school district. The things they're doing at the lift building, they're looking at doing a program like that at the sports complex that could be focused towards sports management, training, facilities management. Two, partnering with groups like the YMCA. You know, there's not a lot of places for youth soccer. Maybe during the week they could play youth soccer at this facility and play under the lights. It'd be kind of cool. There's going to be a walking path. You can bike. We're going to connect it to the bike trail that goes between Mattoon and Charleston. So there's going to be other ways for people to enjoy this complex, whether it be concerts or things, even if they're not into youth sports.
And there's going to be a health benefit too, right? Something out there we forgot to touch on. I saw on the website it says health.
There'll be some a medical component of some kind. We're working with Sarah Bush on a medical component. I can't give too much details on at this point, but yes, there will be as well. I would say the biggest piece or takeaway is sometimes the naysayers are a lot louder than the people that are for it. So when we go to do some town hall meetings, when we go to educate folks, if people are supportive of the project or people are or want to learn more about it, please come out and please make your voices heard as well. I find that squeaky wheels are usually the ones we hear about and we want to give grease to, but when you actually go to talk to folks, I think there's overwhelming support for this project.
And those will be announced here once after the July.
Yeah, probably in the next
meetings.
couple of weeks. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. A couple of random questions for you. How many Royal Kings have you visited? You know.
Me personally?
Yeah.
If I had to guess, I'm gonna say we have 135 stores. I'm gonna guess maybe 90 of them.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, and you're still young. So.
Yeah, and my job was part to go visit those. Yeah.
What do you get asked the most? Is it about the sports complex, or is it about Royal Kings commitment to Mattoon, or what?
Dunkin' Donuts.
Really?
Head and Shoulders. Usually the mall, and then usually whatever's the latest rumor. So,
and then there is the other component of Royal King is in the process of buying some more land on the other side of town for proposed development down the line, right?
Yeah, so the company's working on acquiring some additional acreage to the north, and so yeah, I think it was in the paper trying to get that rezoned to allow us to do some further expansion in the future. But the growth, I've been at Royal King 10 years. We had 60 stores, and from a revenue standpoint, we're, I think, a seventh of what we are 10 years later. The back office went from 30 people to 300 plus. I mean, it's been incredible.
Cool. If anybody has information, it's MattoonSportsComplex.com.
MattoonSportsComplex.com. There's an email people could shoot an email to. But yeah, I'd say keep an eye out for more advertising on those public town events.
Yeah, coming up in July and August. And of course, the best news is we'll have a new name at some point in the future.
New name, hopefully, to go along with it.
Unfortunate for Blake, because he named the official. That's all right. That'll be the joke that goes around forever after this thing comes to fruition,
That's
right?
fine. Yeah, I'll take it.
So, Blake, I appreciate you coming in. I know you just got back from your honeymoon, and congrats on that. Appreciate you coming in to WEIU today, and hopefully we got a lot of the information out today. This show will continue to repeat a few times so people can refer to it to find out some of the answers, and you've been more than forthcoming today, so appreciate it, my man.
Yeah, thank you.
We are WEIU. Everyone have a great day.